Who does not have a group of 2 or 3 right now? Who is in a group where somebody you already know is in it? Okay, we have no cheaters. This is good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, I'm going to be doing some presenting today, but come on in, you guys. We just split up into groups. Hopefully, you can find someone you don't know. Do you all 3 know each other already? Yes. Do you all go to the same school? Yes. Can somebody switch around and be kind and give these people a new home? Like, we've got some people over here. It says, join us. I don't know, like drop in on a group of 2 right now where you don't know. Cool. Thanks, everybody. All right. Now that you guys are with your new friends, as it were, okay, let's get to know them. I've got one somewhat not personal question, which is, if you had to give up one food for the rest of your life, which one would just be like knife in your heart? Or I should say stuff. Like, which one would just kill you if you had to give it up? Okay? The second question, and this will take a little bit more thought, is for someone meeting you for the first time, which hopefully is happening right now, what are the 3 things that most define you as an individual? Okay?
Oh no, I just want to see if the volunteers there. Yeah.
Just sucked together.
Hi. Are you guys going to join us? Okay. Are you from the same school?
Yeah.
Do you all know each other already?
We don't know.
Works well enough. We're trying to work with people we don't really know, so that's good. Go ahead and find a spot on the floor or something. Sit down. You can start discussing the stuff on the... Are you joining us? Cool. Sorry, excuse me. Do you know each other by any chance? No. Perfect. You guys can work together then. Cool. And you don't know him. You can work together. That's lovely. Do you guys know each other? Oh, great. Maybe you can mix it up with them. Figure it out with these 3. Come on through. They don't know you guys either. So maybe if you guys can get like 3s. Come on in. Come on in. It's all good. Just sit on the floor. There's some space back there by the camera. Hey guys, the ones who just came in, please, can you guys find like 2s and 3s from people you don't know? I promise it'll make this much better. Okay? Floor sitting middle people, would you mind scooting back a little bit for them? Thanks. Find somebody you don't know and insert yourself into their group, okay? All right, my friends. Sorry to sound like a kindergarten teacher, but I got a really bad sore throat 2 days ago, so my maximum projection volume is not what it normally is. So sorry about like the crazy clapping, but let's now that you guys know each other a little bit more, you're probably wondering about me. Sorry about that with the mic. I would say the answer to that one is definitely rice. And I had to do it, and it was so hard. I would say the three things that most define me as an individual to a person I'm meeting the first time is I would tell you that I am a follower of Christ, I am multicultural, multiracial, and I'm a wife and a mother. Those are the things that probably encompass most of my life. I am so much older than you might think, my friend. I don't know, he just kind of gave me that, what? I'm old. I'll tell you, I'm so old that I actually started the first of these scores working with Glenn all those many years ago. So, thank you guys. When I found out there's like 200 of you here, I was like, what? It was so like, anyways, it's great because we're having dialogue about stuff that is so real and so part of our everyday lives that a lot of times just doesn't come on campus because nobody wants to talk about it. It's not safe, it's not cool, and now there's this awesome venue for that, and I'm glad you guys are all here, ready to work on it. So I know in the schedule it said that this was supposed to be about being biracial or multiracial. Caveat here, I know that race and culture are two very different things. But in a lot of the work that we'll do and a lot of the work that's been critical scholarly research, which there's not a lot of it, those words are sometimes used interchangeably. This workshop was mostly designed for people who would consider themselves, I like to say, blended heritage. And that word can apply to a lot of different people. Can you, some examples? Anybody?
I'll share for her since she doesn't want to. But she said she is Hindu, Italian, Mexican. Oh, I'm not. Oh, some of it's wrong, but half Mexican, a quarter Honduran, and then a quarter Italian.
So somebody who comes from multiple ethnicities or multiple cultural backgrounds, right? This could also apply to?
From Hawaii, black, Hawaiian, white, raised in a Filipino household, and
Right, so that's a great example right there. So, but you would still identify yourself as Kama'aina, right?
yeah.
Of course, right? He's got a singular identity there. You can ask him what that means later if you don't know. But he said he grew up with like a bunch of Asian kids. So that's another great example. Somebody, when you're growing up in a place where the culture, that dominant culture or the dominant ethnicity doesn't match yours. So you've got parts of both. This would also apply to the term TCKs. Do you have any TCKs all up in the house? It means third culture kid, missionary kids, embassy kids, military kids. You grew up in a culture not of your parents. Okay. Another, transracial adoptees. Okay, so that term covers lots and lots of people, and as our world gets a little more swirly, we're going to see more and more where blended heritage becomes less like what, and much more like, oh, let's talk about this. Let's find out what your parts are. So what I wanted, how many of you attended on Friday James Cha's workshop on racial identity? It was called Journey of Racial Identity. Okay, it was used the scholarly and critical theory model of somebody named Janet Helms. And she outlined a progression. And there's one for white people and there's one for people of color. But what do you do if you identify as both white and a person of color? You know, or what if that doesn't quite fit you? Okay, so there are other models to be had. And I'm also using the metaphor of journey because it is. It's something that's ongoing. It's something that you have to choose to start doing. And once you get started, you don't know where it's going to take you. So before we get started, I will tell you, you will hear a lot of my own examples. Why? Because cultural identity is really, really personal. It's only something you can do. Now, some of you who may be thinking, but I feel monoracial or monocultural. What does this have? No. The world we live in right now, the fact is you can choose what culture you choose to identify with multiple times over the course of your life. So it's good to have this sort of thinking going already. But no one can tell you how that's done. When you go on this journey, there aren't going to be any rules. No one's going to say, here is the milestone where you find blah, blah, blah. That doesn't happen, okay? So you kind of have to write those for yourself. Many of you have experienced what's called reassignment. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But choices about what you identify as or who you identify as can only be made by you. It is not appropriate for others to make that choice for you, although many of us have experienced that. And we're going to talk a lot more about how to deal with that, okay? And then finally, you need to own your own process, okay? You need to own what you are doing. Don't make apologies for it. Don't tell people, oh, I mean, sorry, it's just that right now I'm going through this identity thing. You know what? We're all going through identity things our entire lives, okay? Don't make apologies for yourself. Own your process. It's yours. It's not your brother's. It's not your mom's. It's not your roommate's. It's not your boyfriend's. It's yours, okay? So, that said, I want to give you 5 travel tips today for your journey of cultural identity, whatever it might be and wherever it might take you. Now, before you start on a journey, you need to know where you're starting from. I'm going to tell you right now, you will get this in a handout, okay? So you'll be getting a printed copy of the 5 travel tips. So you need to know who you are right now. I'm going to give you very quickly a little bit of critical theory background on mixed race identity as a starting point for you. And the reason I'm doing that is because some of you in here could care less about critical theory. Some of you, your majors or where your critical inquiry is taking you, this will matter a lot. So to hit all the bases, let me just go through it real fast. We have something called, it's called Wren's ecological theory of multi-racial identity development, blah, 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 blah. Dr. Kristen Wren's a sociologist, and she worked mainly with college students. That's going to become significant in a moment. You'll see why. What's important to know is that there are 5 stages. But she takes into account, the reasons it's called ecological is because it takes into account both the physical and psychological space you're in. Meaning, where do you live? Where are you going to school? Where are you right now in your thinking? For those of you who took that workshop about the journey of racial identity, there's, contact and, integration, those sorts of things. You don't need to think about those words for this. But that's the idea. Like, where are you on that journey? Maybe you just started thinking about it. And also, how do your peers relate to you? Okay. There also, she has thinks about identity development with this framework. Person, what do you look like? Physically, what do people think you are? Right? Also, how does your family interact with you? How much do you know about your own cultural background? Okay. The process, that's how complex do you want these interactions to be? You might want to keep them simple. You might really want to dive into it. The context, this is where are you in your life right now, right? What kind of, and also time, where are you in your life's timeline? And this is why college students are important. So most of you in here are undergraduates. Some of you are not, it's okay. But generally speaking, I would say the best time to do this work, the hard work of self-identity is now. 18 to 25. Why do we say these ages? Because before 18, you're probably living at home. You're with your parents. You're in a homogenous sort of situation. It's familiar. It's comfortable. Once you get out of that, things start to get challenged and shaken up. Why 25 is the end? Because by 25, most likely you'll either be starting or fairly well established in a career or possibly even a relationship. And when that happens, things get complicated again. So in that space, also, physiologically, the way your brain works, this is the time. Do the work. It's totally appropriate. You're supposed to be doing it. It's okay. Please. It's really messy and really unattractive when somebody starts doing this for the first time, like age 50, 60. It's hard because you've got all those years behind you of things that are in your head and in your life. And people won't accept it as much. Now, much easier. So, there's 5 patterns. They are not a progression. Not like the Helms model. They're not a progression. You can experience them different times, all at once. So, quickly, here they are. And the reason, again, just so while you're listening, try to find yourself in this, okay? So the first one is called monoracial identity. This is where you choose one. You've chosen one, you're sticking with that, okay? Most of the time for multiracial people or for multicultural people, it's going to be the non-dominant heritage. Just seems to be how it is, okay? The next one is called multi-monoracial identity. So this would be somebody, for me example, I would say, I am white and I am Asian. So it's different monoracial identities, okay? And a lot of it is dependent on peer acceptance. So if I'm rolling mostly with Asians, I'm gonna probably start to identify a lot more with that. A little bit of background, I grew up in Japan. My Asian ethnicity is not Japanese though. However, a lot of people expected me to act a certain way because I looked a certain way. I'm sure this has happened to some of you. So this is where that happens, okay? What's the difference between multiple monoracial and multicultural or multiracial? And the answer to that is you use different terms to start self-identifying. These days, I would not tell you I'm white and Asian. I would tell you I'm Hapa, which means white and Asian. Or I would say I'm multi-ethnic. I'm my own category. That includes lots of monos, okay? And so another characteristic of this is you tend to identify with other people of mixed heritage regardless of what it is, meaning that when my sister called me up and was like, Erika, you've got to read this book. It's about a guy, he's a senator now, but it's amazing. He's like half black, half white. He grew up in Hawaii. He like moved to Indonesia, and then he was living in Indonesia, and now he's a social worker, and now he like just got elected senator. And it's totally, he's a PLU, which means people like us. PLU. I was like, whoa, I totally got, of course, some of you are like, oh yeah, that would be our president, Barack Obama, all right? Back before he was that. But sure, there was a lot of things that we identified with. Do we have anything in common with his background? Not really, except for the mixed heritage, okay? So there's two more here. One is extra-racial identity, and these are the people who say, race is a sociological construct, I am of no race. And then finally, there's situational identity, and maybe some of you will definitely identify with this. Most common for the TC case, those of you who may be of one ethnicity, but you grew up in another culture, which is that depending on who you're with, you're going to start to slide into that identity to match who's around you. And that slide might be very comfortable, might be, you don't even think about it. The slide might be really upsetting to you, like, oh, I'm so totally like not authentic, or it makes you feel like you're betraying part of yourself. Or you could totally be like, hey, I'm gonna be with these people now. I know how to speak their language, I know how to act like them, I know how to eat their food, I know how to roll with that, and that's fine. So there's no value judgments there. Now, I've given you these 5 pieces, right? You're gonna see yourself somewhere in there, okay? But the important thing to remember is, above all, that who you are right now is also a created being. You're not an accidental collection of parts, okay? You're not. I don't know if anybody in here has been told that they were a mistake. Doesn't happen quite as much anymore, but it used to be a pretty common experience for people of blended heritage. But you're not. Some things are also very hardwired into your personality. If you've never taken a personality index before, I highly recommend you do it. And the handout that I have will have resources for that. The Myers-Briggs is the most famous, the one most people use. When you know how you are hardwired to react to things, it really, really helps you know how you're going to react to other people and situations. So that's the most talking I'm going to do in one go. It's just to get that out there. With the people in your group, I want you to discuss a few things now. You maybe have seen yourself in that model, okay? And I'll be handing it out. I want you to discuss what right now are the cultural parts of yourself that you've chosen to accept, reject, and what are you still negotiating, okay? I'm not going to have enough of these. So, right now I'm just going to make sure every group gets one. Maybe. Kind of share them, pass them back so they're shared. But identify with that because that's what your mom. And like pass them that way. You'll have to share. You can pass them down, share. Can you guys share back there? Thanks.
And like with friend groups too.
Do we have extras in the group? Does any group not have a handout? Okay.
Can I get a handout or two? Did you run out?
Snatch one from them because they have enough in their group. Can he get one of those for his group? Please, thank you. Would you mind can you incorporate yourself here? That would be great. Thanks. Oh, good. There is another person out here. I just wanted to make sure that everyone had someone. All right, my friends. It's the kindergarten teacher clapping thing. I'm so sorry. I feel so dumb doing that. I promise I don't think you guys are a bunch of 5-year-olds, not at all. Usually I can walk around the room. I like to listen to what people are saying. I'm hearing a lot of different really good things though. Thank you for being honest with one another. I'm hearing one thing kind of coming out is like people are talking a lot about I want to claim this, but people aren't letting me. Sort of different variations of that. We're going to talk about that, I promise, in a minute, okay? But I want to give you very quickly my next kind of travel tip, as it were, is when you start on a trip, usually you think, I'm going to go to here, and then I'll be done. This is not that kind of journey. You need to know the direction you're going in, but you do not need to know the destination. And I'll give you an example. I know some of you are like, so what's your story anyway? So, briefly, the answer to the question that I'm sure a lot of you have heard is, what are you? And again, we'll talk about that in a minute too, you've already heard, ethnically, Caucasian, Asian. Culturally, I spent most of my childhood, in fact, all the way up through the end of high school, on a tiny little island in Japan, Okinawa, very similar to Hawaii. I miss it a lot. Came here. I got my degree here at Biola. Glenn saved my life, I think. That's when I started doing this work of cultural identification, identity. It was very, very difficult for me to identify as American. I didn't know anything about being American. The time I felt the most American and when I finally started being able to grasp that was much later, when I met my now husband, who is European. He's from Germany. He's now a dual citizen. But we speak 2 languages in the house, and I now have a son that looks like this. Oh. If you had told me when I started this journey that I would have a blonde, curly-haired child, I would have said, please God, no. Everyone will think I'm the nanny. Right? The truth is, I live in Southern California, I live in Los Angeles. Some people have thought I was the nanny, but for totally different reasons. People, I think, are a little more open-minded here about the fact that you may not necessarily look like your kids all that much sometimes. Now, why am I showing you this other than showing off pictures of my child? It's because of this fact, is that this person has completely changed the direction of my journey, because now I have to ask myself, what cultural values do I want him to have? He's going to grow up most likely passing as white, honestly. If he continues this way, people are going to take him to be a Caucasian male. And if he ends up being straight, he's going to be playing life on the lowest difficulty setting. That's just the way it is in this world right now. So how do I make sure that he's an ally? How do I make sure that he stays open to what we're talking about now? Right? Starts now. So this is a totally different journey for me now. A lot of you guys are not at the place where you're thinking about marriage or starting families. But I'll tell you, this identity journey greatly will impact your relationships, hugely impact them. And if I think I hadn't gotten as much of the work done as I had when I met my now husband, I don't think we'd have the relationship we have today, because he's had to do his own negotiation, being someone who's chosen to live the rest of his life as an expat. So that's my weird cultural swirl now. And so that's what I want you to think about when I say you don't need to know the destination. It's a moving target. It's going to change throughout your life, okay? So remember, the other thing is that you will always go through life with society kind of imposing that classifiable as good. You need to know how you react to that. I want you to think right now, when I said the question of, what are you? Some people flinched, some people laughed. If I had the question, where are you from? No, where are you really from? Right? I have different answers for that too, right? I would say I grew up in Japan. I'm an American citizen. I spent a huge portion of my life being out of this country, though, for 9-10 months at a time. I worked in a job where I traveled all the time. So is I really from anywhere? A lot of TCKs will tell you they're from everywhere and nowhere. So I also want you to think about, personally, do you like change or do you prefer stability? Because that's also going to inform this journey. Not a value judgment, okay? I'm not saying change is good, stability is good. It really is, who are you, hardwired, okay? So with that in mind, with those questions answered, I want you to talk with your friends now of, right now, what do you think, or who do you think are the biggest roadblocks, okay, in your current journey? It might be what's, it might be who's, all right? And the other question I want you to think about is looking into your future. Where do you hope you're going to be, right? Where, like 5 years from now, what would you like the 5 years from now, what would you like to be able to say to yourself now? As in, like, don't worry, it's all going to work out. You're going to figure it out. It's cool. What can you do to make that happen now? So it's more, identify the things that are kind of holding you back right now. What can you do to remove those? Okay? Yes, question? I did, because I was going to reveal that later. But for those of you who are wondering, my mother, it would be Chinese. You will find out how. No worries. I'd rather have you get the curiosity out so you can, cool. All right. All right, my friends. I want you to take a quick look up at the screen. This is the 2010 census form where you were supposed to fill out race. It was very different than any other census form because it was the first time you were asked to self-identify your race. There was a lot of controversy and a lot of confusion, but for the very first time, people who identified with more than one race or who didn't like the race they had been assigned at birth got to say what they wanted in their own voice. Yes?
Yeah, I remember I was filling out my college application. It was like black, white, Asian Hispanic. I was like,
Right? And then what are you left usually checking?
other.
Right? Other.
Yeah.
Okay? Is that okay? Is that not okay? We will talk about that. Okay? I used to honestly have the hugest issue checking other. It was like, right? But I was totally unwilling to only check one. One of the biggest shifts in my personal self-identity journey was realizing that other was what I've been all my life and what I'll always be, and that was totally cool, and I might as well just embrace it, jump into it, and be like, other, you are mine, and made it. I owned it, and it changed everything for me. But that's again, intensely personal. That's just to tell you what happened for me. Now, 2015, this year, we have a new census, and it's going to be online. Most of you, over 18, you'll be filling out your census forms. Okay? I have no idea what the race section is going to look like this time. Tried to find that information, but couldn't. But importantly, that was the second part. It was a little confusing for some people. A lot of people got all crazy about, like, why is the word Negro on this form? There were good reasons for it. Why do the Asians get so many choices? This sort of thing. Some other race. I had a friend who honestly, she checked this and she wrote Turtle Islander after the first people's story, that the creation story of the earth is being carried on the back of a giant turtle. She was like, I'm a Turtle Islander. Someone showed up at her door and was like, look. But the point was she had the choice. She could do it. Now, we were talking previously about our multiracial, multicultural president. He checked black. That's it. That was his choice. He chose to self-identify as that. He's talked a lot about it. He's very specifically said that it does not, by any means, mean that he's turned his back on his grandparents who raised him or his mom who had so much more influence in his life than his African father. But just for his own cultural identification, he's chosen to identify as black. Now, my point with that is, when the government asks you to identify your race, the government, like the most official thing, right? I'm going to read you the definition. It considers race to be a self-identification data item in which respondents choose the race or races with which they most closely identify, meaning the government says, you are the race that you say you are. So, if the government's giving you permission, what do you do with that? Now, when I talk about Obama has chosen black, or you may have friends who have chosen one, or whatever, like your value judgments kind of come out with that. Here's the thing. Sometimes if you've gone on a trip with your friends, right, you come back and you look at each other's pictures, and a lot of them are the same, but some of them you're like, we went there? I don't even remember that, right? Or they'll look at your pictures and be like, why did you take so many pictures of food? Who cares? Right? This happens. It's the same with this journey. You can travel solo, but if you've got buddies, their pictures may look different from yours. My sister and I identified so differently for so long, and it was a huge source of conflict for us. We're a little bit more on the same page now, but you know what? That's okay. So, diversity means diverse interpretations, okay? So, give some space to other people and give some space to yourself. Don't be attached to seeing things in only one way, all right? Because your normal might not match another person's normal. And your normal might become very different, and now you have a new normal, all right? Again, that shifting, that changing, make room for it, okay? And like you just talked about, you might be comfortable with that, you might not. You should know. So, for what I want you to discuss with your friends is talk about, why do we even bother? Why should you personally question your identity? Why? Why? What personally is important to you about this? And also, do the benefits and the risks outweigh each other in any way? It's good for you to think about that too. All right? All right. These are some of the things that I was hearing. I heard some people, in my limited range of listening in the front here, I was hearing some things along these lines. You want to fulfill your full potential. You don't want to just shut off your identity development at some point and be like, okay, I'm done. So you want to be free. I kept hearing a lot of the freedom. You want to be free to identify as you choose. You want to reject labels from other people. I also heard a lot of talking about family relationships. You want to either connect with one or both sides more, enhance relationships with you don't want to take sides in your family. It sounds to me like some of you have had family pressure where like one side's claiming you, right, more, or you've been encouraged to reject one side as not as good, and you're trying to negotiate that. So these are all really good reasons why you should be doing this, why you should be questioning. Remember though, especially those of you who are doing this and you may be getting some pushback from your parents, they're of a different generation, which may not have had the choices that we have now. My parents were married only 2 years after the last law was struck down against interracial marriage, anti-miscegenation laws they were called. So they were kind of at the forefront of things. In fact, there's a doctor of sociology, Maria P.P. Root, and we're going to be using some stuff she wrote later. And she actually calls that the people of that time were called, before it was the 60s, they were exotics. And then my parents would be part of what was called the vanguard. And then we are what's known as the boomers. Because now 1 in 7 new marriages are identified as interracial. 1 in 7. It's a massive, massive shift in demographics in just my short lifetime, in less than a generation. So you're at the forefront of that. You should ride that wave. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys surf, but if you do, it's an apt metaphor, because when you're surfing and you catch it and it's under you, it's moving, it's dynamic, it's in motion. You have to adjust to stay there and to catch it all the way in and not, and sometimes it does flip you off. And this whole identity process, it's a lot like that. You have to keep adjusting as you ride, all right? This is Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if any of you have read his books. Blink, David and Goliath, The Tipping Point. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's world-renowned. He's very famous. He's also multi-ethnic. I want you to listen to this clip. It's an interview.
For a while, and then I grew my hair back out. And I discovered that the minute I did that, the world treated me differently. The minute I looked blacker, I'm mixed race, and I got stopped by police. You know, I was getting speeding tickets left and right. I mean, it was really kind of a striking transformation in the way the world viewed me. And it was that very kind of simple thing that led me to write my second book, which was an attempt to understand where our snap judgments come from, and why they're so powerful, and how and when they're right and how and when they're wrong. And they're more often wrong than they are right.
Just in case you're wondering, he's half Jamaican, half Canadian. That's his mix, all right? And this is what he's talking about. This is what his hair looked like before he let it grow out. This is when he was getting the tickets. So you can see, all right? Now, why do I show you this clip and talk to you about it? Actually, I dyed my hair black for about 4 or 5 years. And when I let it go back to my natural color, people were like, oh, but what, you look white now. Or like, you looked so much more Asian before. Like, I didn't expect it. It was very, very weird. My point is, very small things can really tip the way people perceive you. How you talk, how you look, how you act, and it is totally, totally in your control about this. Not completely, but a large part of it is, and it does matter how you're perceived. Now, some of you remember the picture of my blonde, curly child, right? Like I said, he'll probably end up passing. I use that word on purpose, as white. He will probably be perceived that way. If he would like to have other people acknowledge maybe the other cultural parts of him, he's going to have to learn how to take possession of that. In fact, I just got it was Chinese New Year this week, Yeah, I sent a picture out to my Chinese side of the family, a picture of him stacking little oranges in a bowl. It's very traditional. And my aunt, my Chinese aunt, wrote back and said, "That little blonde boy doesn't look Chinese. Maybe it's just his stomach. Ha, 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 ha." And my first reaction was like, you know, my aunt, my own aunt. But it just drives home to me how important it is for you to take control of your own process. And so what I want to talk about is reassignment. We talked about this a little bit in the beginning. Part of it is that who are you? What are you? Where are you really from? I'm going to throw some phrases at you, right? Oh, your hair is black hair. Yeah, but you don't speak Spanish. Right? Well, you look totally white. Oh, come on, stop pretending to be Asian. Right? How do these phrases make you feel? For me, they make me feel like this. Like, I'm ready. Like, you know, very defensive. This is called reassignment. And that is when people basically stop your power of self-identification. They take control of it for you to make themselves feel more comfortable. Okay? When I couch it like this, then it helps me to react to them with a little bit more compassion. Oh, you just want to make yourself feel a little more comfortable. You're not attacking me. It's about you. So reassignment, it's not about you. It's about them. It's about them trying to have control. Now, you can decide how you want to react to that. We talked a little bit about family pressures. Sometimes your family are the ones who are your worst enemies on this. Like, they don't want you to go on this journey. They want you to stay the person that they know who you are already. They want you to stay frozen at 14 or 15 years old, or even 5 or 4. I don't know. Every family is different. Some of you know what I'm talking about. It's hard for them to let go of you and see you fly off and do this thing by yourself. And some of them, if they've worked really hard to get you to deny part of your heritage, they're not going to take kindly to you trying to in their mind, reassign it to yourself. But you know what? That's totally your right. So those questions, what are you? Where are you from? I want you to think for a moment, how does it make you feel? Or for those of you who may not physically look in a way that gets you those questions, how does it make you feel when someone does any reassigning to you? They say, well, why do you even care? You're white. Why are you even trying to learn Spanish? Why are you doing this or that? Questioning your choices. Think about how you feel about that for a minute, okay? So here's what I want you to do. Now that you kind of know where you're coming from is, I want you to, I called it in this, your elevator pitch bio. And this is where I was going to answer the question. This is what I mean. If you think about it now, then you have answers for this. If you think about it now, how will you respond the next time someone says, oh, well, you don't even speak Spanish? How are you going to respond to that? The next time someone says, well, why do you even hang out with those people? They don't even look like you. What are you going to say to that? For me, this was the most common thing. I mean, strangers in the grocery store would ask me this, and I just developed like a little 3-line bio, which was, I'd say, I'm American. Beat, beat, wait for the confusion. And I'd say, my father is 3rd generation in this country. He's Caucasian. My mother is the 1st generation in this country. She immigrated with her family from China, and they all naturalized. But I grew up, then they're like, then you can tell they're like, oh, and then I'll say, but I grew up in Japan, so I really identify with that culture. But I'm married to a German, and we speak German and English at home. And so I spend a lot of time in Europe as well. And then, you know what? Most of the time, they just want to ask me more questions. They're curious. That's all. And sometimes they're actually asking me because they're in an interracial relationship. They know someone in an interracial relationship. They just want to get feedback from me. So if I, hands down, not this, I can get a lot farther in my conversations with people. But that, again, my journey was I decided I want to be an advocate for discussion, for dialogue, for change, for people having that open curiosity and not shutting it down. That's me. So where are you? I want you to talk about that, but I really want you to see, can you get a few bullet points? Outline your elevator pitch bio as to who you are, where you're from. I got a great one from you in the back. Thank you very much. When we first started, when you're like, I'm from Hawaii, I'm this, I hung out with these kids. Or here when you're like, these are my parts and this is my cultural blend. So something like that. All right, go ahead.
But I always say it's super weird. Like,
Would anybody like to volunteer to share their little elevator pitch bio? Anyone? Just a few lines? Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Jessica, and I'm Nigerian American, but I grew up in America, and I was like around a lot of white neighborhoods, but my mom's remarried to a guy who's half white, half Costa Rican, so all of my siblings are mixed, and my whole family's just
Swirl.
swirl of just awesomeness. So yeah, and I didn't grow up with black culture at all in my house. Very much African culture. So it's just that's kind of shaped who I am and how I think and stuff like that. So
Cool.
yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Richard. So I'm half Romanian and half black. My mom is from Guam. My dad was raised in Germany, but he's black. And so I'm also a military kid, so I've grown up in different parts of the world. And so it's kind of hard for me to identify with one specific, I guess, heritage or race. So I kind of just like it's a mix of everything.
Great. Anyone else?
My dad is an immigrant from Mexico. My mom's white Scandinavian from the Midwest. I grew up in Indiana. I also lived in Turkey for a time as well. I'm also a military brat, so just kind of a lot of that.
A lot of influences in who you are. Great. Anybody else? One more? I love how, oh, good, please.
I'm Erin. My dad is German, and my mom is Latina, and both of them are military, and both their parents were military. So I don't really have like a hometown or anything, just kind of, but I never lived outside the U.S. But I don't really have like a everywhere. Yeah, but my parents met in Germany and lived in Okinawa as well, so.
Cool. You see how they took like what, maybe less than even 30 seconds, but they've answered those questions. What are you? Where are you from? Why don't you act this certain way? How come you know about blah, 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 right? Those things, the answers are all packed in there. You have something now, you can just pull it out, and there it is. And what I like is all of you presented these with no apologies, and that's the most important thing I want to emphasize. You must never apologize for what you say you are, for who you say you are. You're the one person who determines that, okay? I want you to read this, think about it. We're going to respond to it in a moment. I know it says mixed raceness. I would like you to think blended heritage. If there's one thing you leave with today, it's this that I want you to know, is that it is an act of worship for you to be confident and happy in who you are. It is an act of worship for you to do this work, for you to do this journey, for you to fulfill your full potential of who God made you to be. We always like to quote Psalm 139, right? You knit me together in my mother's womb. You knew the bones as you formed them. You sculpted me out of nothing into something. If God is that intimately involved with your creation, do you not think that it is an act of honor and worship and joy to Him for you to do the work of owning that fully? It is. That is why you don't apologize for this journey. That's why you don't apologize for what comes out of it. There may be bumpy things in it. And there may be points where your friends and family run the opposite direction when they see you coming because they don't want to talk about it anymore, and you just do. That's okay. That's okay. But know that between you and your Creator, when He sees you doing this, He says, well done, good and faithful servant. Good job, child. So what I want you to do, I gave you that brain and I gave you these parts and I gave you this story. I didn't give you those parents by accident. I didn't give you that crazy nomadic lifestyle as an accident. I did this on purpose for you to be all you can be. Please get out there, grab it, figure it out, take it, okay? And so it may be too personal for you to talk about with people you've just met, or maybe it's a good time for you to go ahead and be honest. But I want you to think about how you are wearing your cultural identity right now. So for some of you, it's still that wet sweater. And part of the reason why you're in here is because you'd like that to be a superhero cape, right? For some of you, you're already on your way. What does that garment look and feel like to you, right? What would you like it to be like? And that might be a good metaphor for you to start with. But more importantly, how do you feel like God is involved in this, right? What's going on right now in your heart with him? Where are you letting him in, even? Maybe you've never even thought about it in that context. Part of the reason why I like doing this workshop here, because I can speak freely about this last part. I can't do that elsewhere. But I think to me, this is the most crucial part of it. Because you're creator and you have that conversation going. And his whole conversation is like, do it. Yeah. All right? So if you want to just jot some notes down by yourself, that's fine. If you want to talk with the people, that's fine too. Take a few moments to respond to that, okay? And I like to just say, remember, Jesus is the ultimate in blended heritage. Not just from a human standpoint. I mean, if you look at his genealogy, he had all kinds of stuff going on in there, but think about it. Human and divine, that's like ultimate blended heritage, right? Okay, so he gets it. He gets it.
But sometimes it's also hard because again, so sometimes it's hard for me to say I'm going to do this where
All right. Quick recap on the travel tips. Know where you're starting from, okay? Know the direction that you're going. Know that it doesn't necessarily have a destination, okay? Don't compare your experience to someone else's, right? It's going to be a uniquely individual process. I'm not saying that people can't help you with it, and I'm not saying that you doing this alongside trusted people isn't good. It is. Just don't expect your results may vary, is what I'm saying, and don't worry about that. You need to take control of your own story. Period. Don't apologize. And lastly, remember, your biggest advocate is your creator. Let him in on this whole thing. All right? So, I want to open it up to questions in a moment. Before I do that, though, I would like to get 3 volunteers, people who think they are really good at reading things out loud and don't mind. Come on. Okay. I'd like you to read the first paragraph. Great. Could you pass this back to my friend back there? Second paragraph, sir. And one more person. Great. Third paragraph, please. This is called the Bill of Rights for People of Mixed Heritage. And it was written by a woman, Dr. Maria P.P. Root. I mentioned her before. She's done a lot of work on multiracial identity. And I'd like you to just listen, okay? So there's 3 sections.
Not to justify my existence in this world, not to keep the races separate within me, not to justify my ethnic legitimacy, not to be responsible for people's discomfort with my physical or ethnic indignity.
I have the right to identify myself differently than strangers expect me to identify myself differently than how my parents identify me, to identify myself differently than my brothers and sisters, and to identify myself differently in different situations.
I have the right to create a vocabulary to communicate about being multiracial or multi-ethnic, to change my identity over my lifetime and more than once, to have loyalties and identification with more than one group of people, to freely choose whom I befriend and love.
How many of you feel a little bit like hearing that? This is one of the handouts I have. There are not enough for everybody, all right? But you can take a copy on the way out, those of you who want one. I will figure out where to put them in a moment. My challenge to you is, and I will hand this out to you now, is the people that you've just spent the last hour and a half with, you're going to go and have dinner tonight. You're going to hear some really awesome drumming. Actually, it's on my bucket list. One day I will also be taiko drumming with them. Please. My challenge to you is have dinner with these people you've just spent an hour and a half with, and let's keep talking about this. I know I didn't give you enough time for you all to say the things that you wanted to say. And I challenge you to have dinner with these people because you don't know if you'll see them again. Get out of your comfort zone. Don't eat with your friends. And this resource is for each group. This is also by Dr. Maria Root, and it's called The 50 Experiences of People of Mixed Heritage. I have modified it to, it was originally just for people of mixed race. I've modified it to include people who would identify as TCKs, military brats, embassy kids, missionary kids, transracial adoptees, people who grew up in an area, in a geographic area that was unlike what their skin looks like, all right? Use this as a springboard for discussion, for laughing, for crying, for being mad, for whatever. It's a really good way to just start thinking about this stuff and realize how much you have in common with people who may not even look like you, all right? So I'm going to pass this one through each. And at this time, if anyone has any questions, I just want to open it up. If anyone has, or anything that we talked about you want to comment on. Yeah, go ahead.
A bunch of my friends
One per group.
are multi-ethnic, and I was wondering how to talk to them because I don't know if they're comfortable talking about. They don't like being different at all, and I don't know how to talk to them or if I should talk to them.
No, it's a very good question. What do you do when the people in your peer group aren't comfortable with going on this journey too? Sort of what you're saying, right? Are you wanting them to come with you?
identify with being multiracial or like having different cultural experiences or stuff like that?
My suggestion with this is, if you go back to that may I take this, please? Thank you so much. If you go back to this, you look at that, it sounds to me like they are identifying as monoracial right now, right? Remember, this isn't a progression. This isn't a stage of steps. These are all just stages. You think that they would probably benefit from moving to multiple, right, or multiracial. And I would agree with you on that. The best way I would say to non-confrontationally get someone started on that is just to ask some questions and listen. Not anything confrontational like, why don't you want to accept your other side? I mean, you're not going to get anywhere with that. But for example, using me as a case, I was so adamantly like, I would tell people I have an American passport. That was it. Like, I was not American. Because I didn't know anything about being American. I hated the values that I saw here. I was so uncomfortable in this country when I first got here. But if someone had just asked me at some point maybe, why are you uncomfortable with that? Or, so what was it like being an American citizen, though, and growing up in a different country? What are you finding you actually like about being here? Positive questions that make me talk about my story and my background. People love to talk about themselves. That's the best way to open up the conversation. Then just listen. No value judgments at all. That would be, I would say, how you start it. Because once people start hearing things come out of their mouth, words make things tangible in ways that they're not when they're just all up here. And they may just have never even thought about it, about the richness that they might be saying no to by only identifying with one side. I hope that helps somewhat. Anyone else? Okay, the handouts, if you got one. It has the theories of multiracial identity. It has the 5 travel tips. I also have this further reading and exploration. All right, there are sites for taking personality indexes. Again, if you've never done it, highly recommend it, please. There are resources for scholarly and critical thinking studies on mixed race for those of you who might be needing that. And then just further reading and exploration, there's some blogs here about the mixed race experience, mixed cultural experience, TCKs, that sort of thing. Now, if you did not get a handout and you wanted one, okay, if there's not enough by the time you get there, here is my name and my email address. Email me, tell me I attended your workshop at SCORR 2015 and I want a copy. I want copies, and I will send it to you happily. If you have a question that you didn't think of now or you're too shy to ask it and you want to dialogue with me, email me. Okay, I promise I'll try to get back to you in a semi-timely fashion. I do have a toddler, which makes things very exciting at home in terms of checking email, but I'll do my best, all right? So, before we wrap up, again, any other questions, feedback, comments? There are going to be evaluations passed out. I will never see them, be honest. The only thing I'll see is aggregate data. If you have specific feedback for what made this good, what could make it better, please write that. It'll help a lot. Okay? So, I guess I'll just put this by the door if you want to take a copy. I don't know. Can you know what, that weird podium thing? Can you just stick it on top of the chair and then stick it on top of that? Cool. Thanks. Thanks. So if you want to get one of those as you go out. So. After this is refreshments and a break. I will stay here. If you want to talk to me individually, I'm here. Okay? Seriously, do it. If you can do it, eat dinner with your new friends. Use the handout, use the resource. Keep talking. Okay?
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.